Question, are you able to rename your house or make up a name for your house like you would your dog or your child? Hello, my name is Megan Ruth. I'm a Canadian living in London, England. I've been here for a few years and I like making videos about my life here in London and British culture. So I went back to Canada recently and I couldn't help but notice some things that Canada could use from the UK, meaning things in the UK I missed when I was in Canada. Basically, that's essentially what this video is, essentially. Now, the first one is prescriptions. Basically, in Canada, you have to pay outright for your prescriptions if you are not covered by your insurance, and they could be pretty expensive. I used to work at a pharmacy in high school, and I saw firsthand how expensive some of these prescriptions are. Over in the UK, in England, it's £9 full stop. So £9 is as much as you'll ever pay for your prescriptions. In Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland, it's £0 because it's free. Literally, you don't have to pay anything for your prescriptions, and that's amazing. I think that model is so much better. Prescription drugs can be so expensive, and having that socialist model is just so much more beneficial. And especially for those in creative fields who don't have insurance, it is a lot better and easier to get access to your prescriptions, and cheaper, obviously. So this brings me to my second thing, and that is free birth control. If you've been watching my channel for a while, you know that I love this. In the UK, there is free birth control. Well, not free, you have to pay for it through your taxes, so it's not free, but ultimately the woman doesn't have to pay extortionate amounts for her birth control, and I think that is amazing because in Canada, unless you're covered, again, you have to pay outright for your birth control, and I don't think that model is very beneficial because at the end of the day, the whole country is affected by women's reproductive health. Also, on top of that, birth control is not always needed for, preventing pregnancy. It's also needed for health reasons as well, so I also think that point is important to make. So Canada, get on that. And then we're going to go to free cash points. So not every cash point is free, but there are a lot of free cash points where you don't have to pay extra to use it. In Canada, unless you're using the cash point that is specifically for your bank, you have to pay extra. It is only like a couple dollars, but it adds up. So it is nice to have free cash points here. Again, not all of them are free, but there are a lot of them that are, so it's really convenient. The next point I want to make is about tipping culture. Over in Canada, it is expected that each individual customer tips about 18 to 20%, despite the fact that servers, at least in Ontario, make the general minimum wage. They don't get paid lower than retail workers. Over in the States, they get paid lower, so it makes a little bit more sense to tip. In Canada, it doesn't. Over here, the service charge is added already to the bill. It's obligatory, so if the service was absolute crap, you actually don't have to pay it, but it is kind of expected, but you don't have to. But it's added automatically to the end of the bill, and it's just a lot easier. I just prefer it over here. I think there's a lot of things wrong with tipping culture, but especially when the servers are being paid the general minimum wage, they're not being paid less than. I don't think, 18 to 20% is warranted, is needed. I think 10% is decent, 10 to 15%, yeah. 15% for exceptional service, 10% for standard service. I think that's fair, and having the service charge is a lot easier and it makes more sense. The next one is no charge for bank accounts. So in Canada, you have to pay to have a bank account. And it's bizarre, and I don't know why, but you have to. And it's like a monthly charge that comes out of your account. Over here, you don't have to pay for your bank account, at least not with my bank. I don't know about any other banks in the country, but at least with my bank, I don't have to pay to have it. It's the same with credit cards. I have to pay an annual fee for my Canadian credit card. I don't have to pay an annual fee for my UK credit card. So I think that's great. You don't pay to have a credit card. You don't pay to have a bank account. Canada, what's the deal? Why do we have to pay to have bank accounts? The next one is cheap phone plans. I've mentioned this before, but Canada has the most expensive phone plans in the entire world, I think. Over here, it's just so much cheaper. When I first moved to the UK, I got like a £10 phone plan that was like decent. I had like a decent amount of data. It was so cheap. I was shocked with how cheap it was. In Canada, they're extortionate, and yeah, that's just really annoying about being in Canada. This next one I've mentioned before. I've mentioned a lot of these before in my other videos, so if you've watched my other videos before, I'm probably sounding like a broken record right now, and I'm sorry, but I can't help but proclaim my love for these British things that I just love. Yes. But basically, the next one is ready meals at supermarkets. They're cheap, they're healthy, they're delicious. You got the Tesco's meal deals. Can't complain. In Canada, you have ready meals as well, but they're typically very expensive. Like, you can get like those salads to go, but they're like so expensive. Sushi as well. But there's just not as much options, cheap options and good options as they have in the UK. it's just great, and Canada needs to have more of those. The next one is public transport. To me, this is very obvious because everybody knows that Europe has better public transport than the US and Canada, and I include the UK in Europe because it's still technically Europe geographically speaking. Public transport in London specifically is so much better than Toronto. You do get what you pay for. Yes, it can be annoying sometimes, you know, tube strikes and all that jazz, but generally speaking, public transport over here is so much better, and that goes for the National Rail as well. Getting to places within the UK, it's expensive as shit, of course. Like, a train ticket to Scotland is extortionate, but at least it's efficient. And you can also fly there, which is typically cheaper, and take the bus, which is also cheaper, but like, there are other options apart from rail. The next one is such an obvious one, and it is very unique to the UK, and that is pub culture. I love me some pub culture. And the more I think about this, the more I think maybe Canada shouldn't have pub culture because it is very unique to the UK, and if other countries started adopting pub culture, it wouldn't be a very UK British thing. That's one of the things that makes the UK special, is the pub culture here. So I don't know if I want Canada to adopt this, to be fair. And if they did, they would need to change their liquor laws, especially in Ontario. The liquor laws are like quite strict, so they wouldn't be able to have pub culture in quite the same way as the UK has it. So yeah, no, the pub culture over here is just so special and unique, and I love it. The next one is house names. I haven't mentioned this before on my channel, but I keep meaning to, and I keep forgetting. But I love house names. This was a huge culture shock to me when I first came over to the UK, because in Canada and the States you have the address as the number, like you have the house number and then you have the street and all that, whereas over here a lot of the times houses will have names. They won't have a number, they'll just have a name, and I love it so much. I think it's so cute and so, I don't know. Question, are you able to rename your house or make up a name for your house like you would your dog or your child? Like when you move to a house, can you like choose a name for it, or is it already chosen and you have to kind of deal with it? Let me know. I've always wondered about this, about house names. I think if I were to move to a place, if I were to buy a property, I'd want to rename the house, but I might not be able to. Let me know if that's a thing. Is house renaming a thing over here? Let me know. The last and final thing I have for you today is food regulations. It's not that exciting, but it is very important to note because it is true. I think the food over here is a lot cleaner than in Canada and the States. Now, Canada gets a lot of its food from the States, so that's why, but it's just less sugary. There's less toxins, preservatives, and all that. Like, I actually keep weight off a lot easier over here than I did in Canada, and I mean, I haven't really changed my diet much, if at all. So there is something to be said about the food being cleaner over here, about how your food regulations are a lot more strict. My mom has a lot of stomach issues, and she felt so much better when she was over here. There is definitely something to be said. Like, if you go over to Canada and the States, you'll find like cereals with so much sugar in them. Like, the selection of sugary cereals is disgusting. Like, you do not need that much sugar for breakfast. That's just one example, but yeah, that's basically my list. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you for watching. If you did, please do remember to subscribe and like the video if you want. No pressure, but yeah. All right, bye guys, see you next time. Mwah.